Mhm. So, because you and I have not done enough together, you excited to get in this, online dynasty for
In
NCAA?
this, let's be vague. College football 26. Ethan started a
Yes.
dynasty. It's why I was late. I was downloading the game because I'm like
Oh,
super
okay.
ahead of things. Like you
There
notice,
you
I
go.
haven't been complaining about like, oh, I can't set my schedule. I haven't had any problem. I haven't had the game.
That's true. Yeah,
So yeah, excited
I
to get into
do.
that.
I do wonder if the problem was I customed my schedule before you guys got in, and if that's the case,
I have no
then
idea.
I could always just
I think we
restart
should
it.
live
But
debug
we'll
it in
see.
this cold open, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I think so. We could just turn this into a
I found
Twitch.
his dad!
I think Dad has made some excellent progress today.
Your dad, he's a fun guy, right?
And I love him so much, and I think he's the greatest dad in the world.
Welcome back to the Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex. With me, as always, is Ethan. I'm realizing that my wife's chair is like kind of low, and I can't figure where the handle is to get it. So we're just going to be low tonight, or I'll have to sit up really straight. Tonight, we are talking about bullying. Whether it's your kids getting bullied or your kids being the bully, we're diving into how to address it, how to identify it, both directions. And so it should be an interesting conversation. Before that, we'll do a little story time. After that, we'll work on the dad bod. As always, like, subscribe, especially on YouTube. We post video episodes there early every week. We post video episodes on Spotify, and we post audio episodes wherever else you get your podcasts. If you have any trouble finding one of those links, head over to workingondadpod.com, where we've got all our links to all our socials that we rarely post on, as well as all of our podcast feeds and fun little bios about us. With that said, Ethan, how are you doing this week?
Hello, I'm back. I'm not just a picture of eating a big slice of pizza. Appreciated that.
We missed you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
You were here.
Yeah, I wasn't not here. I'm always here. I'm omnipresent. Anyway, yeah, I'm doing okay. The kind of wish I was still on vacation, which
Sure.
was essentially just parenting in a different location. However,
Right.
there were two other adult bodies there handling a lot, so that was good.
Yeah.
But back in the swing of things. Just yeah, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Also back in the swing of things. Last time that we were both together, I was regaling everybody with our
Mhm.
Boston excursion, our Massachusetts, and all of our Massachusetts trip, and all of getting back from there. And so things have settled in. It's been a nice, easy couple of weeks. My daughter has been going to camp at the gym. My son's been at his usual daycare. It's been, you know, smooth sailing. Rough hiccup on Tuesday, I believe it was, where my Monday or Tuesday, my daughter called, or the camp called about my daughter having an upset stomach. She never like had any symptoms of it than just feeling bad, and she's kind of, slept a little extra last few days, but has gone to camp the rest of the week without any issues or having to be called back. So it's been it's been nice to be back to normal. And then we've got a weird week next week where the kids are going to camp like 30 minutes away because it's the only camp that's open. And then we've got the
Mm.
first week of school.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
All right.
I guess
Well,
that can lead sort of into my story,
sure.
because one of the things that we did deal with this week regards to camp. Well, actually, I'll do a different story. I'll save that for our main topic. But today, this morning, one of the things we did today and Friday, I say it's a normal week, and then I totally blank on the fact that my son does not have daycare today and tomorrow. And today
Mm.
being Thursday, tomorrow being Friday, for those of you who are listening on Friday. And so my mom offered to take him all day which,
Great.
works perfectly. No big deal. And usually on Thursdays, I go to the driving range. My wife has an 8:30 a.m. Pilates class at the Y. My daughter can just be dropped off at camp beforehand. But I go to the driving range, sort of my own little thing, swing back by the Y, pick up my son and take him to daycare so he can get to daycare on time while my wife's class is still going on. Well, the golf course that I go to / driving range literally is next to my mom's condo complex. And so I was like, hey, man, you want to come golfing with dad this morning? Because then I don't have to drive 10 minutes. I can drive 2 and just drop you off, maybe even a little earlier, save myself some trouble. And so went out there with him this morning and we had a great time. I mean, he talked in every single one of my backswings, got a little too close for comfort sometimes. He's 3.
Sure.
But he had a great time. We hit some balls. We went over to the putting green. Like, he made a game out of it. He's been big, played mini golf a couple times when he was in Massachusetts. And so he's turns the putting green into sort of his own mini golf course. Luckily, by not making obstacles, but basically we're just going to go hole to hole and we're going to putt. We're going to see how many it takes. And he's not really good at counting strokes or whatever. So he'll have an 8 and I'll have a 2. Right. And he's just like, okay, we both did it. I'm like, I love this spirit. I love the spirit. For any of you that are trying to do anything, let alone golf, which is really hard. I find it where I look at him and I find it as an opportunity to learn from him, learn from his positivity. He's out there. He's having fun. He's already sweating at 8:15 in the morning because it's Florida in July. Yeah. But he's having a great time because he's there. He's playing with his dad. He's having a good time and he's just enjoying it. And so just soaking in that moment with him and soaking in, just the ability to do something with him was nice. Was it a break from my routine? Do I usually like to stick in headphones and zone out? Yes. Do I like to dial in my game? As much as I reasonably can. I'm not that good at golf, but do I like to work on something? Yeah. Was I sitting there having a lot of conversation? Ooh, there's a plane. Yes. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I tried to just sort of soak in that moment and, appreciate being there with him. How about you?
That's awesome. On that note, my daughter does have a golf lesson this Saturday as we are in the month of August. So there's no ballet on Saturdays and there's no gymnastics on Sundays this month. So we get to creatively fill the time.
Sure.
Story time wise, like I mentioned, we got back from vacation. We were at the beach last week. And I would say the 2 highlights are about my kids, really, not just the fact that I was on vacation. I was not working. I always had a drink in my hand. We only had 20 minutes of rain total in the 6 days we were at the beach. Weather was perfect. But to keep it parenting wise, my older daughter now knows how to ride a real bike. Her grandfather, my father-in-law, is a real cycle enthusiast. Last year, he bought her the balance bike. This year, he bought her an actual bike. And, I didn't learn on a balance bike. I learned on on training wheels. But basically, when we started her on the regular bike, we pushed her and she instantly was just riding. Literally that first push, she's good to go. Was able to brake, was good. What took her a couple days, and frankly, it honestly is because my daughter is short. The seat was as low as it can go. If she grows about 1 inch taller, she will not have to do this move she has now learned on Thursday and nearly perfected, like a jump start. Basically, to start the bike on her own, she needs the pedals in a specific spot, and she's got to push off with 1 foot and go. So literally, she grows 1 more inch, she can just sit on the bike and go, and she will be excellent at bike riding. So that was really cool. She's now actually riding the bike to school, not just on the balance bike. On the same token, my almost 3-year-old, she learned how to actual scooter and every day did the 10-minute walk from the house to the beach, like on the scooter up the sand dune and everything. She was just doing it, which is pretty amazing. So we have to build the scooter we actually bought her before the trip, which is good now that how much we know she likes it, and can do it. It's good that we just have to build it. But now she really just wants to now use the balance bike that her older sister no longer needs. So my wife says she's gonna work on that with her while my daughter and I go golfing or during the golf lesson. So we'll see how that goes. And then on just like a mini thing, like on the last day, the Friday, we left on Saturday, so our last day like at the beach was Friday. My older daughter's like, "Hey, I want a boogie board," and because I mentioned her height, like she's literally the same height as the boogie board. So basically, what I had her do was I was holding her sister, and I was about knee deep in the water. I had her stand next to me, and then I'd show her like the waves coming, and I'd say, "Turn around and fall," and she'd fall on the board, and then the board would take her in. So basically, she learned the basics of boogie boarding, where you just fall on your stomach and let it ride. So she learned 1.5 skills. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, successful trip.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
on those high notes, let's talk about another fun subject, bullying.
Yeah.
And I alluded to this, but what brought this on is yesterday, my daughter was not getting ready for school. She's eating her breakfast and she wasn't getting dressed. And we were like, "Hey, get dressed, please get dressed." And she just wasn't doing it. And it wasn't like she was doing something else, being really distracted, jumping around, but she was just not moving. And eventually we get to like crunch time where it's time to go. And she's just like, "I'm not going." And I'm like, "What do you mean you're not going?" And she was like, "I'm not going." Well, uh, what's going on? And she didn't want to say anything. And she gets dressed, she gets ready. I'm taking both the kids to the gym. My wife worked late, was up late, wasn't going. So it was just me and the kids in the car. And I go, "Why didn't you want to go to camp today?" Like as we're on the way. And she goes, "Well, because somebody's there is mean to me." And this isn't the first time she's said this. She said this about going to after school at the Y. For those of you who've been listening for almost a year, my daughter, you may remember, started doing after school at the Y last year. And she would get on a bus and just go to the Y, and then we'd pick her up after we were done with the work day. And around November, we brought her home because she just said she didn't like it. She didn't want to do it. And she said that there was somebody there being mean to her. Now, this first person back in after school care was an older girl, and I could not really get enough details out of my daughter to assess whether it was really bullying or not, because I always think that that's kind of a first step. Like, we've talked about this before with our kids getting in trouble. Our gut reaction sometimes is like, "Well, what did you do?" Right? And trying to assess that, this older girl was basically saying, "Go get my water bottle for me," or "Go do this," or bossing her around. And my daughter wasn't really saying no. And when I told her she should say no, she was like, "Well, I can't say no." I'm like, "Why?" "Because then she'll just ask again." And I'm like, this isn't clear, right? Like, I understand that this girl is taking advantage of you. And maybe some expert in our comments will tell us that that is indeed bullying. But in my opinion, like, I just didn't have enough details to go, okay. But at the same time, we trial tested her coming home. It worked out, whatever. She stopped going to the Y because she didn't want to, and she came home and it worked. Now she says there's a girl in her group that's bullying her. And I go, "Okay, what's happening?" And she gives me some more concrete examples. Like, this girl is calling her poor and always saying she's poor, or saying that she's weird, or saying stuff like that. And I pull over I get more details on, what this is, I'm like, first of all, you're not poor. Um, so don't, and it's like, even if you were, like, that's not something that's okay to like call people or talk about people. But
Mhm.
I don't think this fellow 6-year-old has any knowledge of anything. My daughter has a full lunchbox, clean clothes, all of it. Like,
Mhm.
I don't think this girl knows anything. And frankly, I don't think the wealthiest people in our communities are necessarily sending their kids to the Y camp on a consistent basis.
Right.
And I'm like, maybe you are weird, but like, you should own this. And so I ended up giving her some advice. And I think I'll come back to this story a little bit on what advice I gave her and what the outcomes were as we go through, some of our talking points here, not to belabor this story, but I just told her, like, hey, you can own these things, but really what you've got to do is not give them the reaction they deserve. So I think we back up and probably start talking about maybe our own experiences and defining bullying. I mean, have you ever been a bully? Have you ever been bullied in your life?
Yeah. So I was a new student in third grade at my school.
Yeah,
That was a private school. So the class was a total. It was two classes, but the whole grade was only 50 kids, and
sure.
I was one of three new kids. The other two were girls. Um, so I had a really hard time making friends in third grade, and I pretty much like had a miserable year. I cried a lot. I tried everything to try to make friends activity wise, but people even at age 9, there were cliques,
Sure.
and for some reason, I remember fourth grade being fine, but fifth grade was also not a good year for me in that regard. But I think I also was really weird getting my first crushes and was probably a little intense and kind of deserved some of what I got. But, making an 11-year-old boy cry who's just trying to express his love for, you know, some of like the most beautiful people on the planet is just like not cool. Um but uh where was I going with this? So
I know
yeah,
some of the
that
people
was
that went to your
really
school, like, you may not be exaggerating.
I know. So I would say that that was my experience being bullied first go around really. And you know, I was kind of, I put, for those of you watching, my under my name I put Buzz McAllister. I wasn't the greatest big brother in the world until my younger brother was about 13 years old and I was 16, and we had a lot more in common. So I can't say that I was always the nicest guy to him and his friends, but for the most part, I try to. I always tried to be a good natured guy, but yeah. And to
Yeah.
me, bully. Unfortunately, and you mentioned it kind of that someone in our comments might say that taking advantage of is bullying, and I kind of agree. I think bullying at its core is finding a mismatch that you can take an advantage of and
Right.
using it for personal gain and sometimes causing the other party pain. Some might call
Yeah.
that pain and gain.
Yeah.
I
You're
think that was
right.
a really bad movie. Yeah, if I
Um,
remember correctly. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's repeated intentional harm, right? And that can be emotional,
Yeah.
physical,
Yeah.
cyber, which cyber is more of a medium and it's still emotional
Hmm.
pain. Um,
Yeah.
but some of the examples, right? Preschool, like, bullying can be like constantly excluding a kid from playing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Developing very early cliques, or
Hmm.
telling, your classmates not to be friends with them, right? When you get
Yeah.
into elementary school, it's, like I already talked about, mocking a peer's clothes, appearance, speech, right? You got plenty of kids who come in to elementary school with speech impediments. I mean, our past president, still had a stutter. So those are the kind of things that you can get, excluding them from play groups yet again. And then as they get a little bit older and they especially get into the world of technology, that can be a thing of like, people texting them things, people, posting like inappropriate pictures, right? Let's say you've got some middle school, high school age kids that want to send inappropriate photos to a crush or a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and then revenge comes into play, right? Those are all forms of bullying. And so it can escalate through there. For me, it was middle school, right? And everybody's awkward in middle school. Like, this is just a certified fact. But middle school is when we started like having to change for gym class in the locker room versus like just going and playing kickball with our classmates in elementary school. Middle school, we had to specifically change into like our school approved t-shirts and shorts and all that stuff. And I was not the smallest kid, width wise, right? I wasn't in the best shape.
Same.
And so there were a couple kids that would call me names about it, right? And I wasn't the fastest and I couldn't jump the highest. And so I got made fun of in that regard. And I definitely think that these kinds of things can stick with you. Like I don't sit there and like stew on these things, but when I think about myself, my weight loss journey, my body image journey, my relationship with food, like all that kind of stuff, I'm like, it probably plays a role. I'm not sitting here working on the dad bod because somebody called me fat in 6th grade, but at the same time, I'm not.
I remember it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I'm not.
It's funny
doing it, and it might just be ingrained in like subconscious. So that's sort of what bullying can look like.
Yeah. It's funny because you mentioned you're not stewing on it, but sometimes I am just like in the shower and I am, just like thinking I'm clear in my head. And I have that George Costanza moment where I say, that's what I should have said. And it's literally about a kid that said something to me in
sure. Yeah, I have those. I've also definitely like people that, have said mean things to me in the past. Like sometimes I, in the past, look them up online, see what they're doing with their life and go, karma came around.
Yeah. The weirdest thing for me is looking back on it, the two biggest bullies that I dealt with in 3rd grade, and this is the most Los Angeles thing ever, is the two biggest bullies. One was the one gay kid in the class, and the other one was a girl who is now a guy. So it was the gay kid and the trans kid were bullying the cis kids in 1995. And I just got to say, or 1997, whatever. Point is, we were ahead of the game and I was a victim. So,
Yeah. So, I think, I'm sorry that happened.
It's okay.
But I think
it's okay.
as parents, one of the things we need to look out for is signs and symptoms, right? Like sometimes they're clear cut, right? It can be sudden mood changes or anxiety. And I think that's tough when you're dealing with young kids because like sudden mood changes are part of the deal, right?
Yeah.
They can go from hot to cold at any time, but then like avoidance of certain places or people. Prime example being my daughter. She didn't want to go to camp, but she didn't want to explain why, right? Because she probably feels embarrassed about it. I think back to the experiences I had. It's like, you're embarrassed. Like, I know my dad listens to this podcast. He's going to hear that middle school stuff for the first time, right? It's not something I brought to him. I just internalized it and moved on with my life. But, like avoiding it, and I never said, oh, I'm not going to school. Like, I just got it over and done with. But my daughter didn't want to go. And so you've kind of got to like prod him a little bit But you've got to, you got to be gentle about it. You can't make them
Mhm.
shut down, and you can't, come too aggressive in it if you can feel like there's something wrong. And I think this is just knowing and being around your kid. Like when something's off, you kind of know it. And I have often used the phrase and gotten my daughter to open up with this, where I'll tell her something's wrong and I'll go, "Hey, what's going on, kiddo?" And she's like, "Nothing." And I'm like, "You sure?"
Mhm.
"No, it's nothing." "Okay. Well, it seems like something's a little off. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but I'll be right here if you need to talk. No judgments. I won't say anything. I'll just listen. If you say, 'Dad, I need you to listen.'"
Mhm.
Usually within about 5 minutes, she comes to me and she says, "Yeah, there really is something. When you asked me, there really is something." And then she opens up. But she's got to feel that space, that knowing.
Mhm.
And I know that she's got to chew on that a little bit of like, okay, I brought up that something's wrong. It brings it to the front of her mind. I've opened the door, let her know that I'm open for communication. I've already told her that I'm not going to judge her and that I'm not going to like comment until she's done telling me. And I try to be careful with my word choice because, again, I don't want to ever say like you're not going to be in trouble, but I say stuff like, "I'm not going to be mad if you told me. If you've done something wrong, I want to know about that so we can figure out how to fix it. If something's bad happened to you, I just want to be able to listen so that I can know what's going on and maybe help you through that." And so that space that I gave her yesterday morning, she opened up to me in the car when I asked her again. So that can kind of help. And
Yeah.
I think
My
that those all go hand in hand. Not shutting them down, not overreacting. Just being calm because they're nervous, they're scared, they're embarrassed, they're feeling a lot of feelings about the situation.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, neither of my daughters has been truly bullied in like the malintent sense that we've been talking about.
Right.
My older daughter, for the longest time, the class divided preschool, just, luck of the draw here, was she was
Yeah.
always like her class was she was always one of about 3 or 4 girls, and the rest were always boys. And not that I don't anytime I meet somebody who's like, "Oh man, you got 2 girls, I can't even imagine. I had 5 boys and 2 girls seems so much more difficult." It's not. You're just sexist. But what I'm saying is there are clear differences sometimes between how boys and girls interact. And when all the boys are playing, you know, Paw Patrol reenactment, and my daughter wants to play with them, and she's got really long hair or doesn't know, because we don't watch Paw Patrol and that police propaganda in this house. We She doesn't know she doesn't know all the rules, right? So sometimes she gets a little beat up in the process, and there is one student in her class, and in an earlier season I talked about selective play dates and kids I don't
Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah.
want to have play with. And we're still dealing with that now that he's back in her class. But in a very specific example with actually a different kid, there is a boy in my daughter's class who is on the autism spectrum, and
Sure.
uh he bites, he hits not just the students but the teachers. He normally has his own person helper in class, as an extra set of hands. However, it's summer, and for some reason, that person leaves at 3. So a couple weeks ago, I walked in for pickup, and I saw where this kid was at least 10 feet away from my daughter. Nothing's going on. My daughter comes up to me. She shows me this picture she drew, was really happy, and says, "I want to show my teacher before we go." So I'm starting to pack up her bag. And as she's walking with her, with the piece of paper to show her teacher, This kid darts at her and then just pulls her hair back to the point where you see her head go like this. And actually, that was when my dad was there with me. And I, might get some hate in the comments for this, but, I'm seeing my kid get like pulled, and I screamed, "Hey," like really loudly at this kid with autism. And I'm sure that's not the right thing to do. But in the moment, I saw my daughter getting hurt. And so I'm sorry if that's not what you're supposed to do. I did it. Come at me, whatever. Point is, it was really intense. And, she's crying, and, another teacher like grabbed him, and all this stuff's happening. And I'm just, I'm standing there holding her bag. And, I end up having to talk to the teacher because that is essentially an incident report in front of my eyes. And, she's like, I don't know what happened. This is so unusual that he would do this to her specifically. And, it's not entirely true. Like, my daughter has mentioned this boy has like bitten her before. But then the weirdest part was the next day, my wife picked her up, and in the exact same moment, same exact situation happened where he wasn't anywhere near her. And right as us as parents walked in the room, he went after her again and pulled her. Like the exact same thing happened 2 days in a row. So the parent, so we as parents are kind of like, we know this kid has problems. We know his parents, like we're not friends with them. I don't think I've had a real conversation with them, but we're aware that they're aware and have gotten complaints before. But it's one of those things where it's like, I don't really know what to do because I don't want to shame a kid for being on the spectrum. But at the same time, I don't want my daughter getting hurt. So interestingly enough, for some reason, us as parents triggered him that week. So the next day, they actually brought in another floating teacher, and they had him literally kind of just, they put the kid with autism playing with blocks, and they had this other third floater teacher literally just kind of sitting by him as like a barrier, so that anytime a parent walked in the room, when he turned around, he could kind of play defense. And it was just a very strange thing that was happening. And again, I don't necessarily think that is bullying, but the only reason I bring it up is because it is an example of like seeing something happen to my daughter that scared her, where she was uncomfortable. And I guess I, in a protective moment, may have crossed the line. So we're just kind of talking about it. So, but I don't really know what's the right answer there. So,
yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know that there is one, right? And that's a super nuanced situation. But some of the other points you brought up, Paw Patrol, whatever, I do think it's important to like distinguish between like what is normal kid play and what is bullying, right? One is repeated behavior, and one is, just like things that happen, arguments, fights. Like people are allowed to disagree at any age, right? And if it's constant and repeated and it's one direction, right? If two kids are always, fighting with each other, and, without saying who's instigating it, like that to me is not bullying, right? But if one kid is always picking on another kid until the other kid reacts strongly, like that's different. And, it's tough. And I think that's one of the toughest parts about this whole conversation. Just like I was talking about with my daughter in aftercare, of like, before I like cry bullying, right? I don't want to say that bullying is up there with murder in terms of like bad things you can do, but at the same
in the
time,
world of preschool,
but like I don't want to cry bullying and like have to I don't want to have to defend my case in a court of child care, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Without substantial evidence. Let's put it that way. But that's sort of like the next logical step. Let's say you have defined that it's bullying, right? This girl calling my daughter poor, calling my daughter weird. What you do about it, right? And I told my daughter, I go, hey, I brought up the aftercare thing. I said, you brought up bullying before, and we, not just because of that, but because of other things, we took you out of after school. Fine, that worked out. But if I let you stay home from camp, then that's just going to teach you that every time something's not going your way or somebody's bullying you, that you just run back to mom and dad and quit.
Mhm.
And I was like, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, but that's just not how life works. There are going to be bullies on and on as you go through school, and it's not going to just be an option to keep you home because your feelings get hurt and it doesn't feel good and you don't like it. And so what we need to do is we need to deal with the bullies. And that's when I explained to her the very simple thing of, and you kind of talked on this earlier, but bullies, the pain and gain thing, they are looking to make themselves feel better by putting you down. I come to find out after inquiring with my daughter, because she makes some offhand comment of the girl that she's talking about bullying her. She goes, well, at least I get to swim today because Wednesdays are a swim day. At least I get to swim today, and she doesn't because she never brings a swimsuit. Light bulb goes off. This isn't some rich kid talking down. Does she ever bring lunch, or does she always get the lunch that the Y provides? No, she doesn't bring anything. She doesn't have her own water bottle. She doesn't bring a lunch. She doesn't bring a swimsuit. I go, she's probably poor, and she's probably projecting. And we're not going to throw it back in her face because that would just make you bullying her. But what you do need to say is something along the lines of, when she calls you poor, say like, I'm not. You can believe whatever you want, but I'm not. And you don't have to keep saying that to me. And you have to do it with that kind of emotion and that kind of straight face, because you cannot show them, even if it hurts down to your bones, you cannot show that it is hurting you. Because if you show that it's hurting you, then you're giving them what they want. But if you're calm, cool, and collected, they don't get the satisfaction of knowing that they hurt you. She comes home to dinner. I say, hey, what happened with so-and-so? Leave out the girl's name, even though she'd probably be hard to identify. I've never seen her in person.
Yeah.
What happened
No
with
reason to
so-and-so?
dox her.
She called me poor today. What'd you say? I said, I'm not. Sorry you feel that way. But if that makes you feel better, okay.
Nice.
What happened? She left me alone and she didn't talk to me the rest of the day. Fist bumps all.
Perfect.
I was like, oh my God, like I was hoping that was right. And holy crap, that it worked. Right? So
good job.
I felt good about that. Asked her again today, no issues. So obviously small potatoes, 6-year-olds, and I was also like, you've got 3 days left of camp. So you don't have to stay home from this camp. You're going to somewhere else next week and she might not be going. So if this didn't work, we did have the out of you only have so much longer in camp. But yeah, I think that's just sort of how you deal with it, is you take away their power, right? Because what you don't want to do, and I think what the human reaction is, you get insulted and you want to throw it back, right? Obviously this gets gamified. I remember me and my friends in middle school and high school would throw your mama jokes at each other. That's not bullying when you're literally trying to insult the other person at a game that you have both agreed upon playing, right? But it turns into that kind of thing when you're doing it for real. Someone insults you, you want to throw it back. And you've got two options in that scenario. Have the response that you would think of 5 years later in the shower ready to go, absolutely level them.
Yeah.
Or be prepared for them, the church store called,
They ran out of you.
Yeah. Well, what's the matter? You're their all-time bestseller. You have to be prepared for a comeback to your comeback. You have to be prepared to go at this endlessly. And if that's not your game and that's not your gift of gab, like I don't recommend that to most people because it usually you got a 50-50 shot of that working. But it is the not showing emotion when they go high, when they go low, you go high. Don't show the emotion. Kill them with kindness. You know, if there had been another swim day, I would have considered like maybe an olive branch of like, this girl really never brings swim stuff. Why don't you take an extra swimsuit? Right? There's no more swim days left, so I didn't actually do any of that. But like, show them like don't react. Maybe show them kindness. You know, that takes a huge heart to consider doing. But then you've kind of got the flip side, right? When your kid is a bully. And I've also got experience with this, not in the school or childcare setting, but you know, and this is tough because you brought this up, and this is a tough balance. But sibling on sibling bully, right? Yeah. Being kind to your younger sibling, and my daughter
or to your parents.
What?
Or being kind to your parents. You know, we were talking a little bit before the episode. Our daughters bully us. And you know what? I just want to say it hurts. So, okay, go on.
Yeah. My daughter has intentionally or not intentionally like hit me with a couple of zingers in the last couple of weeks. So my wife goes, how are you going to come back from that? Like in front of her too. And I'm like, don't hype her up.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, my daughter has a tendency sometimes that she'll pick on her little brother because that's what big sisters, big brothers do. They pick on their younger sibling. It's easy. But she'll do it past the point that he's upset. She'll do it, you know, getting that reaction until he's just like straight up crying. And so I have straight up told her, if you are doing something while you're laughing and they're crying, you're doing something to make you laugh and make them cry, that makes you a bully. Like I have not sugarcoated that for her because I am like, that is what you are doing. And so if you think it is something different or you think it is innocent, you are being a bully. More importantly, for a young, impressionable younger sibling, you are showing him how it's okay to treat people, right? Because I can tell him till I'm blue in the face, hey man, be kind, don't do mean things. But if you are doing them to him, that's what he thinks is okay because you are doing it to him and he's going to do it back to you. And newsflash, kiddo, you've got 3.5 years and like 6 pounds on him. He's got a center of gravity here advantage that like once he figures out how to leverage that just a little bit better, you are in serious trouble. Like you are not big enough and strong enough. You're a twig. You ain't got enough, you know, I didn't say that to her because that would be bullying. But like, listen, time is not on your side here. He's gonna get bigger and he's gonna like kick your butt. So maybe just relax on that.
Well, it's interesting. I actually just thought of something. So the other day we were at dinner and my daughter, you know, there was a weird lull in the conversation between the four of us. And she says, I'm fat. And I turned to her and my wife, you know, just shocked. I turned to her and I said, what? She goes, I'm fat. I said, first of all, you are very much not. You are very small according to all of the charts, and you're definitely not a good enough eater at dinner for there ever to be a reason for us to think you're
You'd
fat.
have to take in calories. You cannot beat thermodynamics with your 5-year-old logic.
Exactly. But most importantly, what I said to her was, did somebody call you fat? And she said, no, I just thought it was funny to say. And it's like, first of all, no, we don't call ourselves fat and we don't call other people fat.
Is she spelling it with a
it was
PH?
interesting. Well, I also then I also then said to my wife, unless it's with a PH, and she goes, "What?" And I go, "Nothing, sweetheart." And my wife, gave me a mean look. But yeah, the PH thing's real, man. It's not just acidity; it's spelling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a weird tangent. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
yeah, thank you.
Didn't seem to relate to bullying, sibling
Well,
on sibling.
the question was like I was making sure that nobody called her fat at school in the bullying
Sure,
discussion.
I
You
think
know, I wanted,
that's
yeah,
important.
yeah,
And I think there's a lot, like, that's a whole separate issue about kids and body image that
sure,
we probably need to have,
yes,
because I could do a whole episode on that. But
hmm
and maybe that's what we do next week. But um, I think when you find that your kid is a bully, start with, you know, start with talking to them, right?
yeah,
And it's tough when it's sibling on sibling, especially when, if you're solo parenting,
hmm
right? Because you got to expertly deal with both the
yep,
victim and the bully.
yep,
Um,
yeah. I've
and
had
you
pretty much
gotta teach.
identical
You're trying to
situation.
say, do this, do this. This is how I want the bully to react. This is how I want the victim to react. And then 5 minutes later, he's doing to her what she did to him, because like actions speak louder than words. And I'm like, and that's the point where I like fight small urges that I would never act on, but small urges to be like, you want to know what it feels like, what you're doing to your brother? Let me show you. Like, and I'm just like,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
back off, dad.
Yeah.
But I think
Yep.
like just talking to them about feelings, about their own feelings, right? We went back to the bullies are trying to make themselves feel better by bullying. Why do they feel bad? Is it something
hmm
that you are inadvertently emulating, right? Like, I thought your daughter's story about I'm fat might have been her overhearing you talking about like working on the dad bod or something like that, right? Because kids can pick
Could
up on
be.
those kind of things, but like they also pick up on your actions. And maybe they misinterpret your intentions within your actions or whatever. And so you have to like watch what you're doing. That like if you talk to them in a certain way and you act a certain way around them and you demand, action out of them a certain way, like they're going to do those kinds of, like, I've overheard my daughter dozens of times like taking my words, throwing them in a blender and spitting them back out at my son, and I go, that's not what I meant by that. And like, but I
hmm
realize that like I need to change because like I shouldn't be relying on you for interpretation, right? And unfortunately I
Right.
don't have any concrete examples, but yeah.
No, I feel like I've had some of the exact same conversations, and I've definitely said to my daughter, right now, what you're doing is bullying, and it's not okay. Um, my wife doesn't like when I explicitly call it bullying, but we disagree on that, and I'm gonna keep doing what I'm
Yeah,
doing
I
because
I,
there's
I
no
think
reason to sugarcoat.
I think it depends on how, what exactly. All of this is
Yeah.
a very nuanced conversation, a nuanced definition, but like I think it's important to call it out when you see it. Now, I can get
Mhm.
I can get behind the argument that if you overuse the term, then like it can lose the meaning and the impact, right? Like if they're always like, pulling their, messing, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you to their younger sibling, and you call that bullying, then
Sure.
that gets put in the same bucket as stuffing a kid into a
hmm
locker and stealing their lunch money. There's
Yeah.
levels to it. But I think you just have to use your judgment. I don't think there's anything wrong with calling it bullying. I don't try to use it often, but when I do
Yeah.
see the
Now that.
behavior, I just try to say it calmly of like, hey,
Mhm.
what you're doing is bullying. And
Yeah.
especially to my daughter who has had it happen to her. And the things that I have heard have happened to her is not what she's doing to my son. So it isn't one of those like vicious cycle kind of things of like, well, this happened to me, so I'm going to make it happen to somebody
Right.
else kind of thing. You usually see in inspirational
Mhm.
videos or whatever.
Sure. No.
But
Not a
I still
hurt
do know,
people
hey, this is-
situation.
you're laughing. He's crying. Like, I need
Right.
you to understand how that's not okay. Right?
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. And yeah, I wouldn't say overuse it, but it's the same thing. You know, if I can point it out in real time, I'm gonna. And I don't always necessarily think that when you point something out to somebody in real time as constructive criticism, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to internalize it and make that their personality. Hopefully they learn from it. And that's always like what I'm going for.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah. So
Anyway.
yeah.
Should we work on the dad?
On that yeah. But don't call me fat, okay? No, so what happened, so I mentioned I was on vacation. I always had a drink in my hand. I definitely went in vacation mode. In fact, on that Tuesday night of vacation, I did shamelessly eat enough food where I fell asleep. Not at the table, but I definitely fell asleep feeling full to the point where I said I definitely ate myself to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
But ultimately, my goal was to go on 5 jogs. I actually only got to 3 because on Monday and Tuesday I just slept in till about 10, which was quite nice.
Body.
And my body needed it. And so what I did do, I broke from we got back Saturday night, and when I left my last weigh-in, our Thursday, July 17th episode, I was 183.6. When we got back on Saturday night, I did weigh myself. I was 185.8. So despite the fact that I always had a drink in my hand, I only had 3 workouts, ate a lot of food. Like we walked over to the local ice cream parlor every night because my daughters have their grandparents wrapped around their fingers. Ate a lot of ice cream, but so I only gained 2 pounds on this vacation, but I weighed myself before this episode 184. So ultimately, I've reverted back to where I was pre-vacation. So I'm feeling good. One thing I did want to mention though is, so typically I start off my workout on the treadmill. I will run anywhere from 15 to 22 miles a week, just based on what I do on the treadmill and the amount of time. I've never in the last 3 months run less than 3 miles. That's kind of just like the minimum I do. So about 11 minutes into my run on Tuesday, my phone rings. I normally ignore it, but it's my grandma, my 95-year-old grandma, calling me on a Tuesday at noon. So I'm thinking like, this is either a butt dial or she's in trouble. So I answer, and my grandma, she doesn't have the best hearing, but she also doesn't like to wear her hearing aids, which is so great when she calls you on the phone. She called me on her cell phone instead of her landline, and she either was not wearing her hearing aid, did not turn up her cell phone volume, or both. I don't really know. So between 5 minutes of phone tag with her, I end up not just able to run because it's too much. I'm not focused. I turn off the treadmill. I had restarted it. She tried again. Anyway, I was just mad. Finally, we're hearing each other. She just wanted to know, and again, we left her 2 Saturdays prior. This is now 10 days from when I saw her. Just want to know, did I get home okay? And that was the 30-second phone call, and it totally derailed my entire workout. And I couldn't believe it. So my first sub 3 mile run this year was so I could spend 15 seconds saying to my grandma, yes, we got home. The rest of the workout was fine, but I just thought it was a fun little side tangent rather than me just talking about what I'm eating. So
yeah, I mean, workouts get derailed. Yesterday, after the bullying conversation, I walk in, and instead of being like 8 o'clock on the dot. It's like 8:12 because I had pulled off in the parking lot to address this with my daughter before I dropped her off at camp. And then guy at the front desk goes, "Hey, good morning. Yeah, nobody's here for child watch yet. Hoping somebody will be there in the next 20 minutes." And it's like 8:12, and I'm like, 20 minutes from now is 8:32, and I need to leave here no later than 8:50 to get my son to daycare and have any shot of looking like I got to work on time, right? Just on the math there. So, and hoping to have someone in 20 minutes. I'm like, this isn't happening. So I walked out with my son, and like, I wasn't feeling it. Like, I hadn't slept great the night before anyway. I was going to push through and do my workout because like, that's part of the, you bake it in. You got the childcare. I can't drop my son off early, so I might as well work out, and a B+ workout is better than no workout. But all that said, like, we just drove around listening to songs that he wanted to listen to, and had a fun time. And so, yeah, sometimes they can get derailed, but yeah, on my journey, like, obviously I took a vacation a little bit before you. And regaled everybody with the travel schedule. And so I didn't, like, 2 weeks ago, I was 178.4 was, what my app's saying here. And so I told everybody I felt really good about where I was post vacation because like the scale didn't really move and I was happy with that. Until today, 14 days later, I did not get lower than that. I probably weighed myself 10 times. I was as high as 3 days ago, 181.6. And I was not like, I had one or two meals where like I binge ate some Texas toast at my mom's house, right? Like that's just good. But other than that, like I was like locked in, hitting my protein, hitting my fiber, hitting my calories, like doing what I needed to do. And so I was like kind of frustrated, but also just sort of like maybe I caught myself at an absolute valley and I did do some damage on vacation, which would make a lot of sense. All this to say, I'm now at 178.2, so I'm down 0.2 pounds, but that is the only time I have reached or passed what I was 2 weeks ago. So it's been a very weird couple of weeks. I have been really focused. When I got back and started making my own groceries, I made quite a few of the like freezer high protein meals that I have stored, and I've been using those, and I've been, just like locked in with everything. So it's definitely been a frustrating couple of weeks. And I think that's like the tough part that I think a lot of people that are on a weight loss journey are probably going to go through, right? You're going to have plateaus. You might even have where it goes up. And I think
that's where I am right now.
Not taking the day-to-day too seriously, but using them as data points to inform it. I think there's danger in just going, oh, this must be water weight, or, oh, I must have, had a lot of salt or had extra carbs, which are also water weight or whatever. Oh, it's normal fluctuations or, what it is, but the process works. And sometimes you just got to give it time, and like biomechanics and biology are more complicated than just calories, but try to remind myself that the calories are here because I kind of wanted to, get back from vacation, wanted to start cutting calories, wanted to really get after it and lose the weight. And so it was very frustrating to my mindset to have a little bit of that, like, just like everything's not moving. And I was hoping to have something that started with 176 to be reporting by this point, right? At least like pound a week, right?
Yeah. Hey man, my goal weight was, 175, and I hope to get it in 24 days when I'm at my buddy's wedding, which like was the goal I set. but I've been hitting this plateau where I can't seem to break. I got down to 181, and I just said I'm at 184, and I've been doing everything by the book. 5-day a week workouts, eating the same thing every day for breakfast and lunch. There's a couple things where I'd like to think maybe I'm adding more muscle based off of those tests I've been doing, and just the fact that I'm looking at my body, and I hopefully that's like accounting for some weight, and my body's going in the right direction. It's just it is frustrating not being able to lose weight right now. So
yeah, and I have the same experiences, right? I don't have a wedding to go to, but I do have the same experiences where like I see the number on the scale, and maybe this is a mental shift for me, but like I see the number on the scale and I look in the mirror and I go, this doesn't look what that says. Right. And in a good way, right? I'm like, I look better than this number. Like I don't look puffy, right? I judge a lot of it by like my face, how far my gut may or may not be sticking out, whatever. But I'm just like, I look good, and I do try to take, and I think that's probably what's pushed me through this rough patch of just going like, I feel good, I look good, I am not where I want to be, and the weight's kind of arbitrary, but keep on pushing because it's probably just a little bit of like reset, and my diet has changed dramatically. Like vacation diet and like vacation diet, I felt like I was on this constant quest to find a vegetable to put in one of my 3 meals per day, right?
Right.
And then I get back and I start making high protein, high fiber recipes, and I'm like clearing 100% of my fiber every day through fruits, vegetables, and like high fiber wraps, high fiber cereal, all this stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, my body's probably reacting to like, dude, what the heck? You went from unleaded to diesel here. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's, that's why it's called a journey and not a direct flight.
So we're working on it. We haven't worked on it. It's not past tense.
It's true. It's true. And we'll always be working on it until we die.
Exactly. On that note, thank you guys
Thanks,
for
everybody.
tuning in with us tonight, tomorrow, whenever you're listening to it. I hope you have a great morning. And if I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thanks for joining us. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.